and it's just kind of where I'm at right now. My journey with running has been, had its ups and downs for sure, especially with the injuries. But I feel like I've learned a lot, and I'm definitely a much wiser runner now, and it's paying off big time.
You are listening to the No Gimmicks, Just Sweat podcast with your host, Eric Logan. No Gimmicks, Just Sweat is dedicated to hearing the journeys and unique stories behind an athlete's training and what drives them. Get inspired to own your life and make the impossible possible. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe so that you never miss an episode. Also, please take a few seconds to rate the show and drop me a review. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello and welcome to this episode of No Gimmicks, Just Sweat. Today we have Matt Gavin as our guest. Matt, how are you doing?
Doing great, Eric. How are you?
I'm great. Another day, getting ready for the weekend. How about you?
Same. Yeah, got in a good run this morning. Probably going to stay inside tomorrow, do some strength training with the negative temps hitting the Boston area, and getting a long run on Sunday once those move out.
Yeah, I hear you. All right. So as with every episode, we want to start with a little warm up and with some icebreaker questions, just so the listeners can kind of get to know you. All right. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Morning runs or evening runs?
Morning runs. Absolutely.
All right. Solo runs or group runs?
I'm a big solo runner.
Okay. All right. Run on the treadmill or run outside?
Always outside. Unless there's ice and the negative temps too. Unless it's dangerous, I'm outside.
Okay. Trail runs or road runs?
Oh, that's a tough one. I do majority road runs, but I'd say some of my most enjoyable runs have actually been on the trail.
Yeah, it's just something about being out on the trail, being out in nature.
Yeah, I totally agree.
All right. Favorite race distance to run?
My favorite race distance, I think it's probably the half marathon.
Okay. All right. First thing you do after a race?
Usually just try to hit the snack table as soon as possible and get replenish some of those calories.
Do you have a go-to meal or food that you love getting after a race?
I actually just make like this simple breakfast at home usually, which is kind of like my go-to. I love just having like oatmeal with some banana and peanut butter mixed in. It's like this ideal combo. I'll throw in some frozen blueberries too.
Oh, okay.
It's really good.
Nice. All right, your dream race to run, and it can be anywhere in the world.
It's actually the Boston Marathon. Hometown race. I grew up watching it, so that is definitely my dream race to run.
Okay. All right. If you can go on a run with any athlete or celebrity, dead or alive, who would it be?
Oh, that is an interesting one. Any athlete or celebrity?
Yep. Dead or alive.
I think I'd like to go on a run with like Bill Rogers, actually. I just really like his outlook on running, and I love kind of like the wisdom that he imparts in every interview I've ever listened to with him. So yeah, I'd love to just run with Bill Rogers and just kind of pick his brain for several miles.
Okay. All right, last one. Dream location, anywhere in the world you want to go for a run.
I've been watching some of the UTMB stuff the last few years. The Ultra Trail Mont Blanc and Chamonix in France just looks absolutely incredible. Super technical, so definitely above my definitely would be a jump in skill level. But it just looks so gorgeous. So I would love to run there one day.
Okay. And see, never know. You
never know.
Yep.
Never say never.
Yep, exactly. All right. So let's get started by letting everybody know not just who you are and what you do, but also your origin story. How did you become the athlete that you are today? Think of yourself as a superhero. You're in the Marvel universe. This is your big time. We got to show how you got your power.
That's right up my alley because I'm a huge comic book fan. So
me too. Yeah, me too.
Still holding out hope I can be a superhero one day. Maybe I'll find some kind of hidden power. But yeah, so I was actually an athlete growing up and through high school. So I actually played contact sports mostly growing up. I played ice hockey. And then when I was in high school, I got into lacrosse a bit. The interesting thing about now being a runner is that I actually really disliked running back in high school. You know, in a lot of sports, they use running as punishment. You know, you run laps if like, you know, your coach is upset with you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I used to almost never run through college. I also just did like mostly strength training and just kind of did cardio just to kind of supplement that, mostly like machines at the gym and thing like that. But the way I got into running is that my younger brother, Brett, he was doing the Falmouth Road Race. He had done that a couple of years. That's on Cape Cod, and that's where I went to high school. And the Falmouth Road Race is kind of like this really big race that a lot of the locals turn out to, and it always has a really strong elite field. So he had run that a couple of years, and he actually, you know, I saw him doing it, and it sort of inspired me to say maybe I can do that. I'd never run a 5K or anything. It's a 7-mile race, so I was like, I think if I train, I can probably run 7 miles. So just started kind of. I was living with my friends at the time. I started kind of going out on like this 3-mile loop near our house, and then that turned into like 4 miles. That turned into 5 miles. And before I knew it, I was getting up to like 8 miles. And I was feeling pretty good. And it was just kind of like it was this feeling of accomplishment, just knowing that I could go out there and run for an hour without stopping. I'd never done that before. So my brother and I ran the race, and I just kind of latched onto my brother's goal, which was to run the 7-miler in under an hour. And I think we snuck in just under. It was like 59 minutes and change. I just remember crossing that finish line with like the crowd nearby, and I was just hooked from that moment on. I just really enjoyed feeling like that sense of payoff from having put in the work to rack up my miles, and then crossing the finish line with my brother was just kind of like this indescribable feeling. So then from there, I just kind of went all in, and I was like, you know what? I was talking to my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, and I was like, you know, maybe I could do a half next, but I'm actually thinking about just doing a marathon. And she's like, yeah, go for it, sign up. So I signed up for a marathon from there, and I ended up completing that the following fall. That's actually the only marathon I've run to date at this point, but you know, I learned all the major lessons most first-time marathoners learn. Went out way too hard, hit the wall pretty badly around like mile 18 or so. And I've tried several times to get back to the marathon since then, but I sort of had a string of injuries trying each subsequent attempt. So my running has, I guess that was back in 2014. So I've just sort of been running different distances over the past several years. I've dealt with a few injuries, but I'm coming up on my 9th year of running and feeling stronger than ever. I had a stress fracture at the tail end of 2019, but kind of got back to really regular strength training, and I'm feeling a lot better now, staying really consistent with that. Had a strong fall racing season this past fall, ran a half marathon as my goal race. And it's just kind of where I'm at right now. My journey with running has been, you know, it has its ups and downs for sure, especially with the injuries. But I feel like I've learned a lot, and I'm definitely a much wiser runner now, and it's paying off big time.
Okay. So what does a week of training look like for you? And,
yeah.
And I was going to, and part of that too, another part of that question is, do you have a coach or are you self-coached?
I do not have a coach, no. I kind of follow, I'm following a structured training plan actually right now. I'm following Pete Fitzinger's 1855 plan from his advanced marathoning book. Mm-hmm. I'm training for a spring marathon. It's going to be held in April up in New Hampshire. It's called the Cheat Marathon. But I'm training for that right now, following that plan. And that's 5 days of running. And I'm averaging roughly between 40 and 45 miles a week right now. I'll end up peaking around 55 miles on this plan. So 5 days of running right now. And then I typically do 2 days of strength training. Mm-hmm. And then usually I'll have a rest day in there. And on the rest day, I typically do something like yoga or like light mobility work. I like to get movement in every single day, just to kind of get my body moving around, and it just makes me feel better and kind of helps me helps my energy levels. And it really improves my mood too. So that's kind of like what my typical week looks like right now.
Okay. And, I followed you for a while, and, one of the things I see is that you are a huge fan of kettlebells.
Yes. Yes. They're such a versatile tool. Like I love how, they can help you reach so many different goals that you might have. You can use them to build strength. You can use them to improve your mobility. You can use them to build explosiveness, which I think is just such a major benefit of them. I think something that all runners could probably benefit from. A set of swings, it really engages your whole posterior chain, and it's just a really incredible movement. So, and I just love how minimal they are. You can use them at home. Generally, they don't take up a ton of space. And there's just so many fun things you can learn with them. It's really like a skill, like, learning how to snatch a kettlebell. There's so many little technical tweaks you can make to improve your, how you do it. So, it's something that I love as a tool for both building strength and also just building technique and feeling more confident with my movement.
Okay. And I noticed the thing with kettlebells, people you either love using kettlebells or you don't like using kettlebells.
Mm-hmm.
That's generally the impression I get from a lot of people. Because like you were saying, it's kind of a technique to using them properly to get the full benefit of them.
Yeah, definitely. It's a lot of practice for sure, and just making sure that you're staying, within your abilities, and not jumping up to a weight too quickly because you saw someone, do something on social media and you think maybe you can do it. It's just like running. Like you want to have a progression to get where you want to go. But yeah, just learning like the basic movements, starting out with lightweight is always good. Just learning like the Turkish get-up in the progressions that I was following, a lot of the time they actually just encourage you to start with a shoe on your hand, because if you can balance the shoe on your fist as you're doing a Turkish get-up, that means that your shoulder's in its proper alignment and you're kind of moving through the motions correctly. So a lot of the times they'll encourage you to do some of the movements unweighted to make sure that you have the pattern down before you even add a load to it.
Using the shoe, that's something new. I've never heard that before, but it does make, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, okay, it does make a little bit of sense. If you have something in your hand that has a little weight to it, not a much, but you have something in your hand to, get your form and the movement correct. Yeah,
totally. You'll even see some coaches on talk about using a half full glass of water to do the Turkish get up. Because
okay.
You want to make sure that you have that load balanced evenly as you're getting up, and you're not having a ton of movement in your shoulder, and you're engaging every part of your body you need to as you go through the whole movement.
Okay. Like I said, you learn something new every day.
You do.
We're still talking about training. I know a lot of people don't like to talk about it, but 2020. That's when the world shut down. Everything just kind of got crazy. How did that affect your training?
Yeah, it's actually really interesting timing because I think I mentioned it a little earlier. On tail end of 2019, I ran a half, and I felt like a niggle in my foot, and kind of kept running on it. Not super smart move on my part, and that niggle turned into a stress fracture. So when 2020 started, I was actually still in I was in a walking boot. And then right when the coronavirus hit, that was like maybe a week or two after I got the boot off. So I was in physical therapy. And I really made this commitment to myself to not slack on strength training anymore, because during my 2019 racing season, I did cut back on strength training for the sake of adding more mileage. And I definitely lost several pounds too. And I feel like I wasn't eating enough to support my goals. So as 2020 kicked off, I was coming in saying, I'm going to get stronger, and definitely not going to let strength training fall by the wayside again. So that's actually when I dusted off my kettlebells and I was really getting back to that. And I was way back on running. I was able to log like a mile, I think, right after coronavirus hit outside. And it was like, about as slow as I could possibly go. I was doing a lot of like run walking to try to get some impact back in my legs because I had been in that boot for about 8 weeks at that point. So I actually didn't really have anything on the calendar. I was initially hoping to do a marathon up in Maine called the Sugarloaf Marathon. When I ran that half in 2019, that was kind of like my next goal beyond that. But the stress fracture kind of sidelined me from that timeline, and then coronavirus obviously hit, which kind of delayed everybody's schedules. So yeah, it really kind of made me pivot big time to strength training, and I just sort of started pursuing that for a while and just running for enjoyment on my own time. I would train kettlebells, between 3 and 5 times a week, and I'd go running once or twice. But I never really pushed it, and just kind of did it for enjoyment and for myself. And I actually think in hindsight, I think that break really benefited me, because I got back to running really consistently about a year later, ramping up my mileage again. And I think that break just really helped me, I came back feeling stronger, more energized, and I just felt like I had this kind of renewed passion for running, because it's been a part of my life for about 9 years now. And it's just something that I always see being there, even though my relationship might change with it over time. Sometimes I might cut back because I'm feeling a certain way mentally or physically, but it is something that I know is always going to be there. So it kind of gave me like this newfound love for running, I guess, and a new understanding of my relationship with it. And I don't necessarily just think of myself as a runner. I could think of myself as an athlete who runs. So I think that's what 2020 kind of gave me. It's like I can strength train and run, and right now I'm doing more running than strength training, but they complement each other so well. So I just love being an athlete who knows how to move in different ways.
Okay, that's a very good outlook on things. And when you're mentioning that strength training and how that's kind of a vital part of everything. But I notice with a lot of runners, that's kind of it can be hit or miss with some runners. Because you have runners like, to be a stronger runner, you just have to keep running. But to kind of avoid injury, you have to have a strong body and having a stronger body also can help you become a faster runner. So it's kind of one of those interesting messages that, depending on who you ask, the answer you get may vary.
Yeah, I completely agree. I used to do it too. I think a lot of runners only turn to strength training when they're hurt. And then as soon as they're back on the roads or on the trails, they're like, all right, I'm good. I don't need to strength train that much anymore. I'll go back to, just doing like light stuff here and there. But if you keep it consistent, it really does pay off big time. It's totally worth investing in yourself, and, learning how to lift weight safely and properly, and strengthen those ligaments and tendons that you can run your best.
Yes, definitely. So how do you generally fuel, before, you do your daily training or before a race?
Yeah. So I have a lot of go-to snacks. A lot of my easy runs, if I'm going like under an hour around there, I'll usually just go with like some dried dates. Those are kind of like my go-to. I love them. Give me a quick hit of energy, some sugar. And always need some caffeine before I head out. So I brew up some espresso in a mocha pot. So that's kind of like my go-to most days is dried dates and some espresso. If I'm going out for something longer, I'll usually have that bowl of oatmeal I kind of mentioned earlier. I'll just have some oatmeal with some banana, frozen blueberries, peanut butter mixed in. That fuels me really well on my long runs. So I'll have that before. And then during the run, ambassador for honey stingers. So honey stingers are my go-to. I'll take like a gold gel. I'm experimenting with some of their different flavors right now. But the gold gels have typically worked pretty well for me. I'm just seeing what some of the other variations might how they might affect me during a long run. So I'm working with some of the caffeine stuff too. And then their hydration mix, I just tried to prepare this past weekend and felt pretty good on my 17 miler. So that's kind of how I fuel during long runs. And then, yeah.
The hydration mix is awesome. I started using it last year, and yeah, it's amazing. And no mention of the waffles, the honey stinger waffles.
Yeah, I actually don't use the waffles typically.
Really?
Yeah, I don't. I know it's like one of their flagship products, but yeah, I don't know. I generally just kind of stick with the gels and the hydration mixes.
See, I'm not a gel person, but I do the energy chews.
Oh yeah, I have some of those stocked up too.
Yeah. I've tried different types of gels in the past, and I just can't do gels. Well, I haven't found one that I go, oh, okay, this will work. So
yeah.
So like I said, and then I too am an ambassador for Honey Stinger. So I'm big on their waffles, the hydration mix, and the energy chews.
Yeah, I was sort of the same way with gels. I mean, sort of why gold has sort of been my go-to. I'm just seeing if other stuff works, but yeah, I just love how gold is sort of like very no nonsense. It just tastes like honey from a packet almost. So, it doesn't get all over your hands either. It's not too thick. So that's what I really like about it. Goes down super easy.
Okay. All right. So do you have a go-to running shoe?
I do. Well, I have several. Do you want just one, or do you want my rotation?
Go through your rotation.
All right. Yeah, so I'm a big Saucony fan. So my everyday trainer is the Saucony Ride. But for long run, I really love the Saucony Triumph. It's just like nice and plush. And I actually do I know a lot of people complain about being heavy, but I actually like a heavier shoe for a lot of my long runs because when I get into my lighter racing shoes, I just feel so much lighter and faster. So really love using the Triumph on long runs. And then one shoe I'm really digging lately is the Saucony Endorphin Speed. For me, it works really well at a variety of paces. And I can take it on long runs and hit my paces and feel pretty fresh by the end of it. It has a nylon plate instead of a carbon plate, so you still get a nice pop, but it's not as harsh as I race in the Endorphin Pro, which is pretty firm ride. So the speed is nice because I'd say the ride is almost, it's pretty similar to the Pro, but you just finish feeling a bit fresher. So I'm actually considering even using that for my marathon. I'm kind of debating between the two shoes, but yeah, I love the speed right now too. So I just picked up the Shift recently from the Endorphin line, so I got the whole Saucony Endorphin line.
Okay.
So yeah, really digging it.
So you're pro carbon, because I know again that's another debate with runners. Some love carbon plated shoes, others don't like carbon plated shoes.
Yeah, I do like carbon plated shoes. The Saucony Endorphin Pro is actually the only carbon plated shoe I've used.
Okay.
But yeah, I know I've read a lot of reviews on it, and I know a lot of people say it's a little harsh for them. It beats up their calves a bit, but it just works really well for me. I feel like I load the plate pretty well. I'm a little on I'm over 170 pounds, so I feel like I get kind of like that force from the plate. I feel like it works really well, especially when I'm on downhills or something. I really do feel like I'm getting a nice pop from it. So yeah, I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I've noticed that when I started running and racing a carbon plated shoe, downhill and even going uphill for me, I had that extra bounce and spring.
Yeah, it's a nice feeling, and I used it in a half this past fall, and yeah, I felt great for the half. So definitely think it could definitely be a marathon shoe for me.
Okay. So, do you have anything or anyone that you is your inspiration that inspires you just to keep running?
Yeah, I feel like I have a lot of running idols actually. Yeah, one person I definitely look up to. I mentioned Bill Rogers earlier. Just really historic career as a Boston marathoner. I kind of, I'm from Massachusetts. I live in Massachusetts. So he's kind of like a local legend. So definitely look up to him. I actually really like following along with Ben True's training. I just love how, I don't know, I feel like he is also sort of someone who trains a lot independently. So I really like following along with his training. He's up in the New Hampshire area. So, just kind of working through the New England conditions. So it's really nice to have someone from the area who I can kind of look to their training, and he's really inspirational, just racing at the highest level on the road. And he had his marathon debut this past fall, and that was really impressive. And I get a lot of inspiration just from looking at the ultra community too. I read Scott Jurick's book a few years ago, and he's just had like this storied career. So I just love Scott Jurek as a runner. And then you got people like I love following Molly Huddle's. Molly Seidel's. Seidel's training. I just love like her outlook. She doesn't take herself too seriously, so she's like a huge inspiration. I love Molly Huddle as well. She's also, she's a Saucony athlete and just also really impressive on the roads and on the track.
Okay. All right. So this is kind of a two-part question here. Your proudest moment as a runner, and then your worst moment or biggest mistake as a runner.
My proudest moment as a runner. I'd say my proudest moment as a runner was probably my half this past fall. I think it's actually one of my best races I've ever had. I went out. I think it was just sort of like embodiment of my progression as a runner. Like I didn't go out. I didn't get swept up in the opening crowd. I knew what pace I wanted to run. I had a goal in mind, and I knew what my abilities were when I hit that start line. And I hit that pace early, and I was like, I saw people passing me, and I said, just hang on, just don't chase them because you might see them later. You know what you're capable of. So I just stayed in my zone, and I ran my paces. And then I hit the halfway point. It was nice because it was a double loop course. So I hit the halfway point, and I knew what the second half was going to be like because I'd already run it. So I was like, okay, I can start pushing the pace maybe around mile 10. And then I dropped down to my pace by like 15, 20 seconds for the last few miles and hit a nice negative split. And I think it was just because I ran my own race and I didn't let the people around me influence how I was running from the get-go. So I think that was probably my proudest moment, just crossing that line knowing that I'd run my own race. And then it was worst moment. Was that the second part?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the worst moment is the second one.
I mean, I think that was probably getting that stress fracture actually, because I in hindsight, I have no idea why I kept running on that injury when I knew something was off. And I mean, I think I probably had a stress reaction shortly after the race, but kept running on it. And then I just made it worse. And, in hindsight, it's like, if you're feeling hurt, just sideline yourself, it's just going to hurt you more than it helps you. So, definitely big takeaway that I had out of that was, if you need a rest day, you take it, you listen to your body and just don't push it and protect your future miles so that you can continue training. Cause taking a day off here might be beneficial, or even just going to see a doctor might be beneficial than being out for several weeks. So.
Right. Exactly. All right. So if you can go back into a time machine, what would you, knowing everything you know now as a runner and as an athlete, what would you go back and tell your younger self?
Oh yeah, that's a big one. I would go back and tell my younger self to just like run your own paces and don't be afraid to run easy. I think one of the biggest things that social media has like influenced is like, a lot of people will post their paces and I used to do what a lot of people do, where I would just kind of go out and like hammer every run when I
Right.
first started, because I was like, oh, I need to run the race at this pace, so I just go out and like try to run race pace every single day, um, and that's a good way to overtrain and get hurt. So
Yeah. Oh,
um,
yes. Yes.
yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is like, don't play the comparison game and run your own paces. And the thing is, like, I think with experience, you learn that easy isn't necessarily a pace. It's more like how you feel on a given day. Like my last race in early December, I ran a 5K and my pace was just under 6 minutes. But I mean, most days for my easy days, I very rarely dip under like 8 minutes on an easy day. I'm usually between 8 and 9 minutes for easy days and long runs. So it really is about like keeping your easy miles easy, knowing how to recover, and also knowing that every run has a purpose. Just because it's an easy day doesn't, mean like you're doing less than other people. Like you have specific workouts programmed in to help you achieve your goals, and you have to kind of approach each training session knowing what the purpose of it is and adhering to that purpose, so that you're not pushing yourself too hard. And if I go too hard on an easy day and then I have a workout the next day, I don't want to show up at the workout feeling fatigued because I decided to run
Right.
7 minute pace because I was just feeling good. Like, it's important to keep those easy days easy, so that you can. It's a long term outlook, and I think that took me a long time to learn, but I think that's where I'm at now. So I think that's one of the biggest lessons I would impart to a younger version of me.
Yeah. It is all about letting go of ego.
Yes.
Yes.
Same thing with strength training too. Don't pick up that heavier kettlebell because you might tweak your back. It's like, if you got to approach every session with a intention in mind and a goal.
Yeah, I learned that early on.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of screwed up my shoulder years ago. Like, yeah, I can do it. Yeah, it's ego.
Yeah.
All right. So with running, a lot of people, like you were saying, that as you're in middle school, high school, and college, running was kind of looked at as punishment. But as we get older, a lot of people kind of want to take up running, or take up some type of sport, whether it's running, whether it's some type of multi-sport. But some people have their doubts. So what would be your message to someone who says that, I'm too old, or it's too late for me to start this? How would you encourage them that, hey, you can still do this?
Yeah. I think a lot of people are intimidated by running because they think they need to like come right out of the gate and like, be able to run like a 5K or something right out the door. It's something you have to build towards. And I think a lot of people get really discouraged because they go on a run and they're like, oh, wow, that was really, really hard. And they feel sore the next day and things like that. But I mean, the thing is that, I still feel, a lot of times I don't feel settled into a run until like mile 3.
Yep.
It's not always going to feel great, but it's something that you kind of have to turn into a habit. And you have to like progress at your own pace to make it a habit. So, if that means going out the door and running for a minute and then walking for a minute, or, doing some kind of other training alongside it, like cycling, that's what you got to do. It's something that you can build toward, and there are programs for doing that, and everyone starts somewhere. So, you kind of have to approach it with a growth mindset and say that I'm willing to learn, and, don't get discouraged just because you're not immediately where you think you should be. It's a thing that you have to find enjoyment in it. And if you're not enjoying doing it, you got to find ways to, boost your motivation. And, you can join a run club, things like that. A lot of, engaging with others is a great way to kind of get into that community. I'm a member of a run club myself, just because I like being involved with people in my area and helping. We're all chasing goals together, so it's a great way to stay motivated. So you just got to find like those things that benefit you the most, and just know that everyone starts somewhere. And if you run, you are a runner. So
Right.
if you're running, just 20 yards out your door and then walking and then running 20 yards after that, and you just do that over and over, you're a runner to me because you are running.
Yes, exactly. I've always said that, if you ask what a runner looks like, just look in the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
So what's next for you? Are you training for anything now? You got any races that are upcoming?
Yeah, I'm training for the Cheap Marathon up in Derry, New Hampshire, which is going to be the week before Boston. So I'm training for that right now. It'll actually just be my second marathon. I've tried to get to the start line of several marathons over the past few years, but I'm on week 6 right now, feeling good so far.
Okay.
And yeah, several members of my run club, the Run Club of Malden, they'll be at that race with me. So it'll be nice to have a strong contingent of us from the Malden area there racing together. And yeah, I mean, I'm hoping I can qualify for Boston at that. I'm going to give it a shot. And for me, that's sub 3. So we'll see if that happens.
Okay. All right. So what is a non-running or non-athletic fact about you that most people don't know?
Yeah. I'm actually, I read a lot. So I'm a big fan of sci-fi and fantasy novels. So I read a lot of that. Try to keep up with, fitness books too. I read a lot of strength training and running books, but sci-fi and fantasy is kind of like where a lot of my pleasure reading is. And then I also recently revisited a hobby of mine that I
the kid is at
juggling actually. So I bought some juggling balls and I've been practicing that. I got a few tricks under my belt. So
okay.
Yeah.
Juggling. Okay. It takes your mind off things. It is a concentration.
It is. It's kind of like meditative almost, because you kind of just go into like this like flow state as you're doing it. And it's also, I mean, it's similar to like, everything we've been talking about this whole conversation where, there's a trick I want to learn. I start with the progression and then I learn it. So it's, I just like doing things and I like learning new skills. I just have a lot of interest and I just love pursuing different things. So this is one of my latest hobbies that I've revisited. So
nice. All right, you got any last words you want to share with the listeners?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, if you, no matter whether you're a runner or a cyclist, just always approach your activity with the mindset that you are an athlete. I think that's honestly one of the things that I've learned that's really benefited me, is just trying to be like well-rounded in a lot of respects. I love being good at running, and trying to improve my running all the time, but I also enjoy just moving well, and preparing myself to, do simple everyday things like carry a heavy load of groceries up the stairs, things like that. So, I mean, we've been talking a lot about the importance of strength training, and I try to say whenever I can is that, like, don't discount it from your training. It's something that can really pay off in a lot of ways. I was so inspired to do it that I actually went and got a personal trainer certification because I wanted to learn a lot more about it. It's definitely something that's impacted my training. And I think just like approaching any kind of endurance pursuit with the intention of being a well-rounded athlete can pay dividends down the line.
Yes. Great advice. Well, Matt, it's been awesome talking to you.
Likewise, Eric. Yeah, thanks so much for inviting me on the show.
Well, thank you for coming on to the show. And if people want to get in contact with you or follow you, how can they do so?
Yeah, best platform for me is Instagram. I'm at MattG1022. That's my handle on there. Always available to answer any questions people might have about training or strength training in general. And yeah, happy to connect with anybody who wants to.
Awesome. Again, Matt, thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
All right. You have a great day.
You too. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the No Gimmicks, Just Sweat podcast. We really appreciate everyone who tunes in each week. If you enjoyed today's show, please support us by subscribing, rating, and reviewing this show wherever you listen to podcasts. And remember to tell your friends about the No Gimmicks, Just Sweat podcast. so we can continue to have awesome conversations with everyday athletes just like you. Until next time, have an amazing week.